Okay, guys, Dave here, G7IYK. Thought I'd do a little video on how to set up the Pluto Plus and SDR console for with an Ethernet connection as opposed to a USB connection. This is quite an important feature, I thought, because the ground station, as in the board, with the transmitter and receiver on it, and the Pluto Plus, really needs to sit out as close to the dish LNA and helical antenna as possible in order to minimize the coaxial runs, especially on the transmit when you're transmitting maybe 10 to 20 watts at 2.4 gigahertz. You want to keep the coaxial run as short as possible. So in order to achieve that, the ground station has to be sort of out near the dish. So having an Ethernet connection for control and data is kind of quite important, quite useful. And that's one of the main reasons I went for the Pluto Plus, because it has an integrated gigabit Ethernet controller. So yeah, but in order to get that to work, there's a few steps required in order to sort of set that up. So I don't confess to being an expert on networking. Quite the opposite, in fact. But I muddled my way through and I figured out how to get it to work. So I thought might be useful to share that information. So the way I've done it, and there's probably other ways of doing it, I'm connecting the Pluto Plus via its Ethernet connection over a 20-meter Ethernet cable back into the shack, and then that cable then connects to a USB 3 to gigabit Ethernet adapter. So that's a little adapter that I picked up off of Amazon for about like £10 or something, 10, £12. And it's essentially an adapter which has USB 3 on one end, which you plug into the PC, and that goes into a little box and gives you Ethernet, gigabit Ethernet. So there's sort of three steps to getting this connection to work. I would say the first step is to set up the gigabit Ethernet adapter. So that's the adapter that I've bought from Amazon. Set that up. Then step two is to set up the Pluto Plus with an Ethernet address, and then to check that we can actually talk to the Pluto Plus by pinging it. And then the third step is to then configure SDR console to communicate with the Pluto Plus over that Ethernet connection you've just established. So yeah, I say those are the three steps. So step one here I'm just about to go through is how to set up the Ethernet adapter. Now, currently I have the Ethernet adapter disconnected. It's just sort of sitting here on the desk. So what the first thing I did, now as I say, there's probably other ways of doing this. So, but this worked, and it's worked consistently. So here we are. Standard Windows just powered up. So if I go to my normal settings tab down here, pop that up, you get this usual stuff, and then you go to network and internet. And then over on the left hand side you go to Ethernet, and then over on the right hand side you go to network and sharing center, and that pops up another panel. And then we want to go to, on the left hand side over here, change adapter settings. So that then pops up with a box showing us the current adapter is connected. Ignore the grayed out bit, that's work related, and I didn't want to share that information, so I've just grayed it out. So here over on the right is this is the Ethernet adapter which is integrated into the PC, so we don't worry about that one. So if I plug in the Ethernet adapter that I purchased for this radio purpose, I'm just plugging it in now. So it enumerates, and we get Ethernet 4 pop up over here. Now it's possible that you might get Ethernet some other number, I don't know, but I get Ethernet 4. So if I right click on that and then go to properties. So what you want to look at is Internet Protocol version port 4 TCP/IPv4. So if you double click on that, Now this is the way, as I say, this is the way I set it up. So what I've done is I set my Ethernet adapter up with a fixed IP address. So I think the adapter came with 192.168.70 some other number. I can't remember which, but I've just arbitrarily picked a number which was not going to clash with my current local area network. So I've picked 192.168.70.50. So 192.168.70.50, and then a subnet mask 255.255.255.0. So that means that I can connect things to this Ethernet adapter in a range such I can change this 50 on the end to some other number. So my plan is to set the Pluto Plus up for 192.168.70.60. So that's the plan. So that's it really. So I've just given my Ethernet adapter a fixed IP address, and then yeah, that's it. So we just OK that, and then get rid of all this nonsense up here, and we're pretty much done. So what I'll do is I'll be back in a minute to show you how to then set up the Pluto Plus with the IP address that I just alluded to, the 70.60. So yeah, I'll be back in a minute. Thanks for watching. Hi guys, Dave here back again, G7IYK. So this is the second little part to the video series on how I set up my Pluto Plus to use the Ethernet. If you remember, the first little video clip was how I demonstrated how I set up the Ethernet to USB adapter that I purchased. So in this little video clip, I was going to show how to set up the Pluto Plus Ethernet address. Now, clearly you can't set up the Ethernet address for the Pluto Plus over the Ethernet because it doesn't have an address. So you need initially to plug it into the PC using its USB connection. So that's the USB data port. The Pluto Plus has two USB connections, or two USB ports. One is purely for power, and the other one is its data port. So it's the data port when you need to connect. Now, when you do that, you hear it enumerate. By that I mean you can hear Windows do its ding dong kind of noise, which shows that something is enumerated. And if you open up a file browser like this, and you will notice that the Pluto Plus has appeared down here. And effectively, or essentially, what it's appeared as is bulk storage. So it's the same thing. Same thing that kind of appears when you plug in like a memory stick. You get bulk storage, and but it's got a few sort of files that's part of its setup. Now it's got an info.html, and if you double click on that, that actually takes you to the Pluto website, which has got where you can upgrade the firmware and all that sort of business. Now the file we're interested in here is config.txt or config.txt. So if you double click on that, in my particular case, it just by default opens in Notepad. And this is the configuration for the Pluto Plus. And the bit we're interested in is USB Ethernet down here, because that's essentially what we're going to be doing. We're going to be using a USB Ethernet adapter. The subnet mask is already set up 255.255.0, and all we need to do is enter the address we want the Pluto Plus to be. Now that in my case is going to be 192.168.70.60. Now, if you remember in the first part of the video, I set the Ethernet adapter up to 192.168.70.60. 70.50 in fact. So I set it up, the adapter, to 70.50, and now I'm setting my Pluto Plus up to 70.60. I could use any number for that instead of that 60, apart from 50. So, but I've just chosen 60, so it's just an arbitrary choice on my part. So that's going to be the address of the Pluto Plus. So we save that file, save, and then we can close it. We could open it again just to double check. And sure enough, there we go, 192.168.70.60. Now, the only thing we need to do now is eject the Pluto Plus in a controlled manner. That doesn't mean yanking the cable out. That means ejecting it. So so for Windows, you come down here. Well, in my particular Windows setup, but it'd be the same, similar in yours. Come down here, and there's a little icon here, safely remove hardware and eject media. Click that, and here's the Pluto SDR, and then a drive letter next. Now, your drive letter will probably be different. It just happens in my case to be F colon, but yours could be anything. But the important thing is it says eject Pluto SDR and then the drive letter. Click that, and then the window folds, and it says safe to remove hardware. We don't remove the hardware, don't unplug it. If we open up a file browser again, click on the Pluto Plus. Now this is the important bit, or an important bit. You'll notice that an extra file has appeared, success env update, or success environment update, that's short for. Now if that means that what we just did was successful. So because we changed the config.txt, we changed an environment variable within config.txt, and Pluto Plus after the ejection has reported that that environment update was successful. So if you don't see this, then what you did didn't work for some reason. But in our case it did. So that's it basically. We've now given the Pluto Plus an IP address within the range of our Ethernet adapter. So I'll just pop back in a minute. I'm going to connect it via Ethernet to the PC, and then we'll just do one quick other check to make sure that what we've done has had the desired effect. So I'll be back in a minute. Cheers. Hi guys, Dave back again, G7IYK. So this is just an extension of that second little video I did. So what I've done now is I've connected the Pluto Plus to power. So I mentioned before there were two USB ports on it. One's data, one is power only. So I've just connected the power only one to the PC with a USB cable, and I've plugged the Ethernet USB to Ethernet gigabit adapter into the PC, and then plumbed the Ethernet port on the Pluto Plus to the adapter. So basically the Pluto Plus has now got an Ethernet connection via the adapter and a power connection via USB cable. Cool. Okay, so, and it's all powered up. Now I just wanted to check, so this is the way of checking to see if what we've done has been successful. So we can open up a command window like so, and then we can, if we type ipconfig, so that tells us we've got two Ethernet adapters here. This is the top one here is the one that's built into my machine, so ignore that. And then the bottom one is the Ethernet adapter, the USB to Ethernet adapter. And we can see here that it's set to 192.168.70.50, which if you remember from the first video I did was the fixed IP address I gave the adapter. Okay. And we've got the Pluto Plus connected to it. So let's see if we can talk to the Pluto Plus. So to do that, we can go ping 192.168.70.60. Now remember in the last video, 70.60 was the address I gave the Pluto Plus by adjusting that config.txt file and then ejecting it. So if we do that, Bob's your uncle, we can see the Pluto Plus is pinged, so it's replying. So it's live on the Ethernet connection. So the Pluto Plus is there. So there should be no reason under the sun why we can't talk to it from SDR Console. So that was what I'll do next. I'll be back in a bit to cover that last step. Thanks for watching. Cheers. Hi guys, Dave back again, G7IYK. So this is the last sort of little part of the video, connecting the Pluto Plus to SDR Console via Ethernet. So what I've done since I've been gone in the interim is I've moved the ground station out into the garden and connected it to the dish. So transmit on the helical, not that we need it for this, but and then receive on the Bullseye LMB. I've just got a power cable running out there, carrying my 12-13 volts from my rig or shack power supply, and a 20-meter run of Ethernet cable. So that's the only connections back to the shack, the Ethernet cable and the power. So all good. So let's go through the procedure for connecting it to SDR Console. So the easiest way to do that is to invoke SDR Console. Excellent piece of software, by the way, authors. Superb piece of work. Really, really like it. So let's invoke that. So when SDR Console pops up, it gives you this panel which says, well, what radio do you want to connect to? Now, you might note here that I've got 3 radios. Pluto SDR is the radio you will get when you install the driver software for the Pluto, and that is that was the option I was choosing when I was connecting the Pluto to the PC over USB. So before I started my endeavor with Ethernet, that was what I was using just to play with the SDR, with the Pluto SDR. You also know I've got an SDR Play RSP2. That's a completely separate SDR radio, totally separate piece of hardware, not related to the Pluto. And I use that SDR for HF ham. So I've got a PAN adapter fitted to my ICOM 7300, and that's plugged into the SDR Play. So I've got a broadband spectrum of the band and a waterfall when I'm using HF. I don't tend to use SDR Console there. I tend to use the SDR Uno software because I quite like it. I just set up the SDR Play in SDR Console just to kind of have a little play with it, really. I don't tend to use it. The one I have, the one that's relevant to our discussion here, is the Pluto SDR Ethernet, which is a radio I have added. So if we open the definitions panel, you can add a radio anytime you want. You just hit add, and then it comes up with you whatever you want to add. You've installed the Pluto SDR drivers, and though part of those drivers is what's called a DLL. A DLL is just a piece of software, or typically a selection of function calls, which allows a piece of software, in this case SDR Console, to communicate with the hardware. So we've selected that DLL, and then we put the name in and various other parameters. So it's probably easier just to actually open the one or edit the one I've already added, because it's pretty straightforward. So there we go. So I've given it a name, Pluto SDR Ethernet. You can call it whatever you want. And then the only other thing you need to add is the address. And the syntax for that is IP colon, that's important, IP colon, and then the Ethernet address. So 192.168.70.60. Remember, that's the Ethernet address of the Pluto Plus that we pinged from a command prompt in the previous part of this video. And that's it. So, I mean, you would okay it. I haven't, I won't, because it's already set up, and I won't save it because it's already there. So let's select the SDR, the Pluto SDR Ethernet, and we'll hit start. There you go. There's the satellite in all its grandness. So yeah, so let's just have a quick talk. I won't go into the satellite in too much detail now, but essentially, the bandwidth of the narrow band transponder runs from this beacon on the left hand side across to this beacon on the right hand side, and there's a PSK beacon in the middle. So, and all this other activity, this banging up and down, that's hams using the satellite. So if we zoom in on that central PSK, if you hit these 2 little bars here, it centers it, which is kind of cool. So zoom in on that. I turn on the audio. You can hear that the PSK beacon carries telemetry information, which you can decode, which is kind of fun. So that you can hear the telemetry information. And if we zoom out, if we click on this beacon over here, the left-hand beacon, turn on the audio, we can hear the satellite transmitting its signature. Okay, right, let's see if we can find some hams. So if we zoom in here, there's a couple of guys chatting away here. So we click on him, hit audio.
Calling Sierra 52, Mike Echo, Sugar 52, Mike Echo calling, and please think over.
So there's a guy calling CQ. I didn't catch his call sign, but I'm sure we'll hear it in the next time. When he calls it, he'll give a little break, and then maybe he'll call again. I think it was Mike Echo 2. Maybe he'll call, maybe he won't. We could have a listen to this guy on the left.
CQ satellite calling Sierra 52, Mexico, Europa. Sugar 52, Mike Echo calling. CQ satellite calling Sierra 52, Mexico, Europa. Sugar 5 to Mike Echo calling, CQ satellite, calling Sierra 52, Mike Echo, Sugar 5 to Mike Echo calling and listening.
Well, that was a fortuitous a chap not only speaking English, which is quite a lot of the guys speaking their naked tongue on the satellite, but a chap also calling, making a very nice professional CQ call. So that's kind of cool. So yeah, as you can see, it's a bit like using any other like an HF band. Really, you've got you've got bandwidth, you've got an HF band, and then there's it's linear, and there's just guys calling CQ and chatting in the band, and it's usually quite busy. So let's just have a quick think about the frequency we're on here. So 739, actually the frequency is kind of most of interest is 739,750. So it's slight. Now this, why 739,750? I mean, that's where the beacon should be, but we're obviously off frequency slightly. So the reason for that is that the downlink of that beacon, the downlink of that PSK beacon on the satellite is 10 489,750, so 10 gig 489,750. That's where that's where the satellite's transmitting. But and we're receiving it on the Bullseye LNB. But the Bullseye LNB is a down converter. So and it has a local oscillator of 9750. So what we get out of the LNB is the IF, and that's 10 489,750, the satellite downlink, minus the local oscillator at 9750, gives us an IF of 739,750, which is where that beacon would be if we were bang on frequency. But it's not perfect, obviously. We're slightly off. There will be some drift. It's not closed loop, but that's not a problem. So in the next little video, I will demonstrate how to put that beacon where we expect it to be at 10 489,750, and also how to stabilize it against drift. Now you could do that using hardware, but SDR Console has got a very nice way of being able to do that using software, and it works remarkably well. So that's what we'll do next. So yeah, thanks for watching. Cheers.